Hi, everybody. I want to do this a little bit differently this time. I want to, first of all, hope and say that I hope everyone's doing well. I know it's kind of a tough time right now with this coronavirus, and we're all adjusting. I know we've had to do a lot of adjusting in the last few days. I just want to say that if you need help, please reach out and ask for it. And be sure to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and I will help in any way that I can. So that's it for about that. But my guest today, first of all, this is episode 41, and my guest is Krista Mollion. And Kristen is a seasoned Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur and the founder of the Sassy Method, a business blueprint program for new founders. She teaches them how to become known, liked, and trusted, and find their sassy voice and build sassy time. She's also a mom of four and loves the beach podcast and travel. And we have been hanging out actually quite a bit on Facebook, but we had never met. So welcome to the call. Uh-oh.
Hey, Ellen, sorry, I muted myself.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
I'm back. Hi,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you, Ellen, for having me on your podcast. I really like what you're doing, and I'm happy to be here today.
Oh, nice. Well, it was so much fun just getting to talk a little bit before we actually started the podcast. And you have a fascinating background. You want to tell people more about it?
Yeah, sure. So I have worked in marketing and tech marketing for 20 years, and mostly in the Silicon Valley. So I've been blessed to have worked with a lot of the big companies like Google, Hewlett Packard, Apple, Samsung, and many, many more. And my company that I built and grew specialized in virtual reality. So we were one of the VR pioneers. And as you know, that's a very booming industry that we're going to see a lot more VR in every aspect in the future. So that's my background. And in 2017, I wanted something different. So I kind of got to the point where I was burnt out slash lacked motivation, and I was doing a lot of self searching to figure out what is missing in my life. I have kind of checked off all the boxes of what I had planned for my goals, but for some reason, I just lost it. I lost my motivation. I didn't know what I really wanted to do next in my life. So I sold my shares, ended up leaving the agency, and that was a turning point in my life. And so for the past 4 years now, I have been on this transformational journey.
Hmm.
And so it started off with a lot of inner reflection. I, for the first time in my life, found out what a life coach was, and did some sessions with a life coach. Learned a lot more about mindfulness, and um, just really went deep inside myself to understand, why am I here? Like, I've lived half my life almost, right? And by the age of 40, so at that time, right now I just turned 43, so at that time I was 39 when this all happened, and I'm thinking, okay, that's it. My life's almost over. At least
Hardly. Yeah.
the first part, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. Metaphorically, we
I will
think
say
that
the second
40.
half goes even faster.
Well, there you go. So
Yeah.
40, well, you're right. With every year, every decade, I see the years go quicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that was 2 years ago. That was 4 years ago. Whereas
Right.
when you're 20, there's like a, oodles of time just within 12 months. Somehow
Hmm.
time stretches for you more.
Hmm.
Um, but I definitely felt like, I was at this turning point where I'm like, okay, have I really left something behind? Have I done what I wanted to do? And I started panicking. I started thinking, no, I haven't. So I don't want to just say, oh, I've done some. I've helped other people visualize their projects in 3D. Pretty much is how I
Right.
would
Right.
describe my business. And I was like, that's not a legacy. So that's fun and that's useful, but have I helped millions of people? No. Have I done something that I'll be remembered by? No. And so that triggered me to kind of make some drastic changes in my life. And there were some good ones, but it had to start with some bad ones. So I ended up getting a divorce
Hmm.
from my husband, who my ex-husband is a great guy, but at that point, I knew that we had grown apart and that I had changed and I could not go backwards. So I ended up getting a divorce. I ended up giving up most of my material possessions. And that was a big hit for me because I was one of those people living the American dream, like um, spending oodles of money on material things. And I just had these really high lifestyle standards.
Hmm.
And suddenly it didn't become, it lost its importance to me. And I honestly thought maybe I'm going crazy because I'm like, this is so strange. Like, why am I not excited anymore about these things? Like before I could buy something and it make me happy, or I could go to a spa day because I could afford all this, right? I could just be like, oh, I'll just pay for a short retreat. I'll go away somewhere and I'll feel amazing. And nothing was working. So I realized I couldn't buy my inner peace anymore. So once that awakening started, it was like no more, the old lifestyle wasn't working.
Wow.
So that's
That's a
what's
biggie.
kind of,
That's a biggie.
that's a big journey that I'm on. So
Mhm. So what
and
did you
that
do
journey,
at that point? Then what did you do?
yeah. So I ended up writing a book that I haven't published yet, and we'll get into that in a minute. But
Okay.
I wrote a book about my life, and most importantly about the self discovery journey that I was on,
Hmm.
and rediscovering myself, rediscovering self love, for example, like really what is it to accept and love yourself,
Hmm.
which I thought I did, but I didn't. On the contrary, I was living for everyone else. And also self confidence. Like, what is true self confidence? So, how do you really feel good in your skin? And I'm not talking about fake it until you make it, outward self confidence. I'm talking about just being okay with yourself, how you show up, whether it's a good day or a bad day, whether you're rich or you're not rich, you're okay with that. And that was a huge step for me. So I documented it all. So I wrote it all down, and it actually turned into something bigger, which this biography slash self-help book, it morphed into me creating something called the Sassy Method. And that's something that um, it's kind of a comical name. I know Sassy is a weird name,
I
but
love it. Yeah.
it actually is an acronym. So it stands for
Oh,
seriously authentic, smart, self-confident you. Because when I was journaling a lot, I realized that that's what I really wanted in my life. Like when I would say, how do I want to feel? Like, how do I really want to feel? And I thought successful wasn't enough anymore. That was an old title that I would have told you in my 20s, in my early 30s. By the end of my 30s, that didn't matter to me as much anymore. What mattered to me was being seriously authentic with myself. So not to stop lying to myself. So that's a key component of the Sassy Method, is to stop lying to yourself and to
well, how do
own your
people know
truth.
if they're lying to themselves?
Oh my goodness. You unravel it, because what's happened is we've kind of bandaged ourselves in protective layers like a football
Hmm.
player. We've got padding. And why do we do that? Because our little heart inside is so fragile. So we think we have to bandage it, and we wrap ourselves in all these little lies that we tell ourselves. And most importantly, our reality um, is not what it seems, because we're focused on an outward projection of who we think we should be versus who we really are. So there's a disconnect there, and that's what I say, it's a lie, because it's not what you want, it's what you have been conditioned to think you want, what society has told
Right.
you want, what your parents wanted for you, what you know your neighbors and your colleagues and everyone, you're living up
Yeah.
to their standards, to their
Yeah, well, I
expectations,
mean,
right?
that was very much the beginning of my journey because I ended up in graduate school in architecture trying to please everybody else. And after 2 years, I was like, I'm never going to use this. I hate this. I became agoraphobic. I couldn't leave my house for 6 months, and I had to completely change my life. So yeah, I know what that's like.
Well, you know that feeling. And what I like to tell people is, they're like, well, how will I know? You ask that question. Well, you'll know because you become deeply unhappy. And
Or
I
phobic,
think,
or panic
or
attacks, or
phobic,
whatever it is for you, migraines, or whatever. Yeah,
or you develop some kind of a coping mechanism. So I
yeah.
think the phobia is just one of those,
Hmm.
but it could be an addiction. You could
Right.
develop an unhealthy interest in, you attract the wrong people. So you
Hmm.
constantly have train wreck relationships. Um, you gamble, you drink, you overspend, you overeat, you develop these bad habits, and then you wake up and you're like, my life is a mess, and you don't know why. Well, it's because you're not really living in light. So all these are warning signs you should be paying attention to, that deep down you're not living in line with who you really are meant to be. And that unhappiness, instead of recognizing it because you're afraid to recognize it, you drowned it with distractions, with numbing things, with endorphins. So some people are constantly craving the rush of endorphins, right? Why is that? Why do you constantly
Getting
need that?
addicted to
Because
social media.
yeah, or there's a lot of great things you can get addicted to.
Yeah, yeah.
So anything can turn unhealthy, right? So,
Right.
but why? So we, if we take all that away, that's all the padding,
Hmm.
and we get to the core of, why are you unhappy? Like, why are you're doing this to yourself, because subconsciously you're unhappy. But why are you unhappy? Well, because deep down, and here's where we get to the juicy part, you're not living in line with your true values. So I developed a whole curriculum how to recognize your values and write your own mission statement. Just like a company would write one for themselves and say, here's the goals and objectives of the company. These are the values that we care about at the company. Um, this is our mission, right, of the company. Well, for me personally, that's what it came down to. And that's what the whole thought process of, what life am I living? Nothing really pleases me anymore. That's where it morphed into me having to design my life differently. So, but how can you design your life differently? Or how can you even live your life if you don't know what your values are? And we don't talk about values, right? It's kind of like we were raised a certain way. We may or may not have even agreed with that way. So some of it we may have adapted by default just because we learned it, but we don't really believe it.
Hmm.
Or maybe we married into a relationship and we kind of just adapted their ways. And
Right.
so so it's really hard. Like, I married really, really young. And when I went to therapy, my therapist was like, well, I don't think you really properly acknowledge your own identity. Like, you just automatically grew up from your family and then into your marriage with your spouse, and you just kind of took over that identity. So the first thing of the sassy method is becoming seriously authentic. And this is what it means. It means living in line with your values, knowing what your mission is, and then you can, and only then can you design your life and take action,
Right. But
not
you've got to
before.
have the courage to be willing to make changes.
Absolutely.
That's
So
the key.
the fear, so we
Yeah.
especially women, we overthink and we're fearful. So that's a big one that I had to go through as well. And
Hmm.
and and I like to say you have to step into your fear. So instead of trying to avoid the fear or rationalize it, um or even lie to yourself, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. Yes, there is. Change. And that's this can tie
Because
back
it's
into what we're
scary. Yeah.
as the country right now, as the world right now, going through this COVID-19 outbreak. There's tons of fear, right? All of us
Right.
have some level of fear. And just before we started recording, I started talking about this, and I think this is relevant for everyone right now over the next
Hmm.
couple of months, is that some people are downplaying it and acting like this is all a hoax or a conspiracy, or coming up with the wildest theories that this COVID doesn't exist or
Right.
something like that. And the
Or the
honest
one
truth
I
is,
love, the one that really, actually, I shouldn't say love, the one that actually irritates the crap out of me is when they start talking about how, well, it's only, so many people are going to die. And you're like, well, yeah, but if that's you or somebody you know or somebody you love, I mean, hold on, what is going on? Can you hear that?
I heard a little bit, but it's okay. I'm sure you can edit it out if you
Well,
need
not if
to.
we're talking over it. Hey,
He's probably drilling. He's probably
he is.
assembling stuff.
Yeah, they just
Yeah,
came
yeah.
because we just moved in. They just came to fix the lock on the door.
You know what though? I think honestly,
Yeah,
podcasts, it's not as a
yeah,
problem as you think.
yeah.
Like, if sometimes I listen to podcasts, there's a little bit of noise, and I'm like, so what? Like,
Oh,
I'm
I know. Well, we
interested
had
in
a
what they're
dog barking.
talking,
We had a
right?
dog barking through the last one.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that one's annoying. That one's annoying. But your audience, like, I'm laid back when I listen to podcasts. I'm like, um I get it. This is real life. And that's another thing that very relevant to what's happening in the world right now is a lot of people are having to drop the formalities because
Yeah,
they're working in their pajamas with little kids
absolutely.
at home and
Yeah.
their spouse in confined spaces.
Yeah, well, people,
And there's
if but people are seeing this on the video, they may look at me and go, "Hey, you look tired today." Well, I am tired. We had to move yesterday in the middle of all this, so I'm tired today.
oh well, I'm tired too because who's in his 70s
Yeah.
is quarantined in France. France did a complete lockdown, and he's in right outside of Paris, and he called and woke me up at 1 in the morning
I
because he
saw
was
that.
worried
Yeah.
because somehow my messenger got he tried to call me on messenger and it,
Uh-huh.
it was I don't know, messenger must have done an update on my phone because when I logged in it made me re-enter my login information and like so for some reason I didn't get his call and he was panicked. He's
Oh,
like,
that
what
poor
happened to you?
guy.
Are you
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I understand that nerves are, people are very nervous right now, especially
Yes.
families who like mine who have a distance between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think any of us are getting a lot of sleep right now. It's
Right.
that's why I was just before this I was writing down a meditation about how to de-stress and decompose, a guided
Mm-hmm.
meditation, because I think that from now on most of us should try to do that before bed is just follow this guided meditation. You can listen to the voice, have a nice dark room and just close your eyes and listen because that will soothe us into sleep.
I've been
Um,
doing that every night, and I don't know whether it was from you or somebody else, but there was a meditation. His name is Jason Stevenson. Is that from you?
I think it might have been from me because I've been researching them and just
Yeah,
compiling
it's
them. I don't
really
have like a
good.
I honestly just need those. I need to have a lot of
I do
those in my
too.
life right now.
I do too.
And
Yeah.
I don't look at the news at night at all because it's sad. I feel like the TV right now is showing more post-apocalypse movies than usual.
Yeah, I saw that you
They've been
said that.
showing
Yeah.
like all these movies and I'm like anything with any kind of violence or panic or drama is
Right.
not the time to watch that, everyone. No horror, no sci-fi. I know that some people love those genres and I respect that,
Yeah.
but we already have a natural level of anxiety from the
Right.
situation. It's a good time to revisit those comedies. Like tonight, I plan to watch a comedy.
I don't know if
Um,
you noticed, but I've been posting more funnies it's like,
yes,
yeah,
I
when
love that. See, and it's not
I need
disrespectful,
them.
right? We
Yeah.
need that. We need
Yeah.
so one of the things I've responded to people is I really, really take this COVID outbreaks very, very seriously.
Yeah.
But we do need comic relief. So do not consider
Absolutely.
that. Please notice the difference between someone being audacious and disrespectful and saying, this doesn't exist or so what, we're going to die anyway, and
Hmm.
somebody who's posting a corona joke, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like today, I posted one about corona babies. I said that in 9 months from now, we'll probably see a lot of corona babies because people are confined to their homes.
Right. And one of my
It's
coaches was
cold
saying,
outside.
yeah, and in a decade we'll see quarantines.
There you go. See, and it's not being disrespectful. We're just trying to lighten up the mood. That's
Right.
all, right?
Right.
Big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
I did see a woman on TikTok who went viral for licking a toilet. Have you seen that? A 21-year-old woman.
No.
And I think USA Today picked it up and
Ay,
was
ay.
saying like this is just awful,
Yeah.
for attention that she would do that just to prove her point. And a lot of young people are thinking they're immune to this, but they're not because they're going to carry it and transmit it,
Right.
and that's how we're going to continue spreading it. So
Well, not only
I
that,
don't.
I saw a
Yeah.
thing that really shocked me, which was they were showing the statistics from Italy, and they were talking about what the percentage was of who was getting the virus in the different age groups. And the biggest one was actually 35 to 44.
Interesting.
And I think that's because a lot of older people aren't working anymore. They're more at home,
Yeah, the
and
interaction.
yeah, and
Hmm.
the more interaction, and like you said, people just aren't taking it that seriously. But um, the more you can work at home. I know a lot of people. I was talking to somebody today in a company that I needed to connect to, and I was having trouble hearing her, and she said, "Oh, it's because I've got this new setup because I had to start working at home." So people aren't expecting a whole lot right now in terms of technical
Yeah.
skill or. any of that
Well,
too.
it's a great taste for everyone who has not worked from home. Like
Yeah.
I have worked from home a lot in my life. I've also managed a lot of remote teams. So in
Hmm.
a way, I'm ready for the
Yeah.
COVID outbreak because I know how to set up communication channels and manage people remotely.
Yeah.
But I've been surprised in my career how rare that skill is.
Well, I'm
People
very
really,
lucky. I'm very lucky because I was
yeah,
in the music business before this, writing songs in my house. I started like in 1979. So,
wow.
yeah, and then I got online in 2004. And even before that, I remember when computers came in, and in the 90s was when I started going from, I would write lyrics and I would write them all longhand, but then I would have to keep rewriting all the lines every time I wanted to put a new line in. And at first I was so resistant to being on a computer. And then all of a sudden I made the leap and I got my first Mac. And then it was like, oh my God, how did I ever live without this?
I know what you mean. My mom used to type and
Yeah.
she had like whiteout and she would go back and she would re
Yeah,
I don't know,
exactly.
re-spool the machine.
Uh,
And she had been trained to be a typist, so she could type very fast. She wrote her PhD on a type on a
hmm.
machine, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
typewriter. And I remember the papers and the little whiteouts, and then
Mhm.
she'd be like, okay, I have to redo this one. I was, oh my goodness. Today we're, speaking of which, we have so much to be grateful for, don't we? And in the midst of panic, every day I wake up and I say thank you. Just thank you to the universe. Whether or not you're religious, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you woke up in a bed. Did you wake up in a bed? Were you out in the cold and the rain? No, you had a roof over your head. The air, we can still breathe. I'm outside right now because it's been raining so long. I've been confined inside. I wanted to be
Mhm.
outside, but you know, our ecology is damaged, but it's
Well,
not
that was another
unlivable. It's
thing.
not to the point of, the air. It's not being transmitted like a virus. When we think about what is worse, a viral outbreak or a nuclear outbreak. So I would totally take the viral outbreak because I so believe in science. My dad is a biologist. My sister's a biologist. My family is very, very, I have several doctors in my family.
Mhm.
So I have confidence in the human race to figure out how to solve this, how to create better tests, how to create a fast test, how to create a vaccine.
Yeah,
I
I
believe in those
I
things,
believe
you
in that
know?
too. What bothers me though is like you see things like, the seas rising. And in Holland they're doing fabulous things with the canals and building it up and everything. It's the will. I worry about the will in this country. It's like nobody wants to pay for anything.
Well, Ellen, the problem is that in this country, people are selfish.
Yeah.
And that's sad to say because
Yeah.
I don't want people to be offended by that. I want you to look in your soul and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to be part of the solution, not the problem. And if
Mhm.
you say that every day, you'll become selfless. And I know that because the American dream is to accumulate wealth, build wealth,
Right.
and buy,
Yeah.
right? And
I
this is
actually
going to
said
change
that.
a lot,
I actually
right?
said that in a post, and one of my followers says, who I've worked with before. I mean, he's an ex-client, and he was like shocked because he thinks of me as quote a good person, which I am, but it was like, how could I possibly say that people were selfish? And it's like, because that's what I think.
Well, let's put it this way. There is absolutely nothing wrong with building wealth and wanting to better your life and better your
And taking care of
circumstances.
yourself first. I mean, that's selfish in a
Yes,
way, but that's not what I'm talking about.
right. But
Yeah.
here's where we draw the line is we've been taught that every man for himself. So what that
Right.
means is like I'm going to build my wealth and then I'm going to fight tax increases. I'm going to fight anyone trying to regulate me. And we're so
Freedom
terrified of
under the
that.
guise of freedom.
Freedom. We're so terrified of losing our freedom and losing our hard-earned dollar
Hmm.
that we do it at the expense of our neighbors, and we do it at the expense of the quality of life in our country, the
Right.
quality of education, the quality of healthcare. And I don't want your listeners to shut down and be like, oh no, she's talking like a socialist. Gosh,
Right, right, right.
gosh,
We're
I am a
capitalists. Yay,
capitalist. We are
capitalism.
capitalists.
Yeah.
This country, we cannot live except capitalism. I mean, and I'm well studied in
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah.
I studied economics, but I did a lot of studies at university about political
Yeah.
systems,
Well, we're kind of
in
getting off the
relation to
topic of this
economics.
podcast, but
Yeah.
it's all kind of related right now because of what we're going through. But I do just want to say
Yeah,
about that, and then we're going to move on because there's some other things I want to ask you. You know, in Italy, one of the things that they said has happened is that the water, the canals, like in Venice, are cleaner than they've been in 60 years because they don't have people throwing stuff in there all the time and just, all of the human things that people usually do. So also the air has been cleaner. So there, we've got to, and there are people working on like turning plastics in the ocean into, getting rid of that or reusing it or whatever. I mean, there is a lot of innovation that can happen, and I just pray that it keeps
absolutely.
happening. But I
So
want
it's
to
the
talk, I know
will.
you talk
It's the
about
will.
habits. I know you were doing a
Yes.
challenge on habits. So why don't we talk a little bit? How can people have good habits during this crazy time?
I think this is the perfect time to work on your habits
Mm-hmm.
because when I started this, so let me back up and just say that I'm kind of obsessed with habits. And I started in January of this year with saying my keyword is focus this year,
Mm-hmm.
and focus so that I can implement routines and measure my successes better, like better manage my progress, because I tend to be a person who is all over the place. I'm a
Yeah.
creative,
I think we
and this is
most of us are. Yeah, I'm a creative too. Yeah.
so creatives. What that means is that I have a million and one ideas, so I'm never out of ideas. And this is great because I'm your gal to help you with your content, because I never run out of ideas for you. So
Right.
if you're like, oh, I have writer's block or I'm stuck, come to me, and probably to you too, because we're going to help
Yeah.
you. Trust me, we're
Yeah.
creatives, we know what we're doing.
None of my clients get writer's block because if
There you
you only
go.
talk to them for 5 minutes, then they're fine.
Right. So creatives, we have ideas, but we're not good with systems. So what I've had to do in my lifetime is really work hard to have systems in place. And when I when I switched from being an agency co-owner and having a team, having a lot of people working for me, to being a solopreneur, it's a lot like right now people switching from being an employee in a company to working from home and
Mm-hmm.
trying to, so you have to relearn your habits. So what that made me hyper aware of is what what is the basis of success? Success is measured by action, but actions are really just habits. So all these little things we do from the time we get up to the time we go to bed are habits. And we have to be more conscious of what we're doing, and then we have to instill small habit changes that lead to major results.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all about tiny habits. So I started this challenge inside my Facebook group because, um, well, first and foremost, my Facebook group is only to make people's lives better. So I made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to sell to people. I'm not going to try to lure them into something else. I just want my group to be about helping people live a little bit better their lives, right? So
You know,
last year we did a morning challenge. This time we're doing a habit challenge. We're going to redo the morning challenge again. So
it's
that's
so
what I do.
funny though. I have to say because the uh, the the group for the podcast of mine,
Yeah.
people started kind of posting thing. I was on the same page as you. I wasn't going to do anything in there, and then people started complaining, and they said they wanted to be able to market, and so I finally said okay, and now we do a marketing Monday day. But at first I
No,
was
that's
against it
true.
for a
I
long
think
time.
groups are, I mean, honestly, groups are for community. So
Yeah,
I really think you have to let people build community. So if they
yeah,
want to introduce themselves, if they want to share things, that's important. And there,
yeah,
I have, I complain a lot about this because I find that some of these
yeah.
group rules are so absurd,
I know.
so
I've seen them.
anti-community.
Yeah.
But in any case, my group is all about is all about hacks to live
Mhm.
your life a little bit better. So we do time management, productivity, focus, and now we're doing habits. And so this habit challenge that I started was because of my own problem, right? So I always like to experiment on myself first,
I think we
and
all do. Yeah.
that's the way to do it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
all of us we're at different stages in our lives.
Mhm.
We have different levels of comfort or previous knowledge with things. So if I throw you into anything new, like working from home, if I throw my whole team into working from home, Well, 3 people are going to thrive because they've previously worked from home in their old companies or they were freelancers. And 5 people are going to just sink because they don't know what they're doing. So you can't just expect from everyone to thrive the way. So it starts with recognizing where you're at, you as an individual. And that's where I think a lot of coaches and course programs fail, is that they don't really articulate before you buy the course or the
Who
program
it's for.
who it's for, because
Yes.
they want to make as much money as possible. So they say this course is for consultants, coaches, online business owners. And I'm like, okay, who? And I'm waiting for the who, and then you explain a little bit more.
Right.
And you can say, have you just started your business? You have no idea what you're doing, or you've actually been running a business for a while, but you have these pain points like
Mhm.
sales. Sales is going to be always on. How do I get consistent sales into my business, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe you're overworked because you've done everything yourself and you make enough money, but you're terrified of hiring anyone. And that's a different pain point, right? So first and foremost, to change a habit, we have to recognize who you are and where you're at without shaming, without blaming, and be like, okay, I've done some self-reflection, because I can't tell you where you're at. You have to,
Right.
or you can work with a coach too, who can ask the right questions to help you figure it out. But no matter if you do it by yourself or with somebody else, it comes from you to recognize, I'm really honest with myself, because why should I lie to myself or to anyone else? Here's where I'm at. These are my pain points. Like me, it was always having too many ideas and not having enough systems in place to accomplish them and pull them to the end. That was my big problem, and it's always been, right?
Yeah. Well, it's mine too. But what I found really interesting too is, like I've worked with a lot of different kinds of people over the years. I mean, I've worked with, business owners and professionals and doctors and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. But I've also worked with laws of attraction. I mean, just the gamut. But what I found is exactly what you're saying, is the people that I enjoy working with and really can help a lot are the creative visionaries and the leaders, because they're like me, because I understand that. I understand what it's like to be creative and be all over the place. I understand having too many ideas. And like when they're writing books, what'll happen is they're like all over the place, or they're trying to, like you said, have their book be for everybody, or, they can't kind of focus sometimes. And so, yeah, I think that the people that we have the most affinity with, or have the most affinity with us, are the ones, because we've been there, we've done that, and we understand how that kind of mind works. So it becomes really difficult when you're working with someone. Like for me, I do have one client who is just like totally a tech guy, and it's like it's hard. I mean, the way their mind works is so different.
So, and that's the thing, we can't
Yeah.
please everyone.
Yeah.
What we have to do is we have to help them, give them tools
Hmm.
to guide them how to self coach themselves.
Hmm.
So I don't want to just do done for you services, but there are great done for you services. So
Yeah.
if you're like, wait, this is way out of my comfort zone, I like to build relationships with a lot of
So yeah,
experts.
so do I. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then
the
I
things
can
you're not good at and
refer.
don't want to learn, you shouldn't try to learn.
Right, right.
I
You
get
shouldn't
that.
force
Yeah.
yourself
But let me
if you
ask you,
don't like it, right?
how can people get in that challenge? What's the
So they can go to Sassy Business Bosses, which is
Okay.
my bit, which from the Sassy Method, right? Krista Mollion on Facebook, and you can just request to join. And what I've done is I've documented a 4-step process, and we're on step 3 right now. But this is a system that you can go back, you can watch the 3 videos and get up to speed.
Mhm.
And for each step, there is I've given written instructions what you can do at home, like and in two steps I even gave some homework like downloadables and stuff. And right now I'm actually putting together a sample schedule template for people,
Mhm.
because people are like, you know what, this sounds good, but like my day is kind of all over the place, and now
Okay.
especially now, and like it's not enough. I need even more help. And so I said, okay, well, um, there's these sample schedules for kids right now, how to do homeschooling. Why don't we take a cue from that and try to do that as adults and have like, here's these time blocks. So what I'm doing right now is I'm writing a series of time blocks to show, here's your self-care time block.
Mhm.
Here's, your self-care, your mental break, your physical break. So there's
Oh,
two
that's great.
components.
That's
And
great.
so they have the same color because I'm a visual person,
Mhm.
but one is mental health and one is physical. So, and then what I'm doing is I'm taking this schedule and I'm letting you rearrange the blocks to make sure it works for when you get up, when you go to bed. And I'm
Excellent.
also giving you a checklist. So it's not like, what I want to see is did you try to get as many things in there as possible today,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And if not, see what we do is we make this key mistake is we say, "Oh, I'll try to get to it tomorrow night."
Right.
That's not a way to live. You will not get it done. So if you really are serious about getting things done, we have to automate them. So habits become automatic. I don't even think about what I do. When I get up in the morning, go turn on the coffee machine, right? Or go sit on my meditation
Right.
mat or go brush my teeth. We don't think about those things because they're habits. So the more you think, you start overthinking, then all these doubts come in, then you get distracted, then you have what I call a dump, where you have all these ideas that come on top of each other, and then at the end you're like, whoa, I just need to go on social media and zone out.
Yeah.
So very unproductive, right?
Or sometimes you go on social media and then you get caught up in it, and then I become like a zombie and I can't like get myself off of it.
Well, I actually had to snooze somebody because what I think is right now all the emotions are really high, and
Yeah.
people aren't bad, but what they're doing is they're focusing on the negative, and sometimes these controversial topics, especially anything that can provoke and start
Yeah,
drama.
I know one in particular that I was really
It,
glad you piped in on. Well, we won't mention
well,
who.
but I think piping in, as you probably see from my style, I'm very neutral. I try to present my
No, but
argument,
but
but I
you
don't like
basically what you
hurt
said in
people.
this
Right.
instance was stop this. This was just to upset people.
Trigger. Yeah,
Yeah,
this will trigger too many people. Like, just
yeah,
don't do it. It's
yeah,
better not to do it.
yeah.
And so I find that, social media, it's an escape, but it's also becomes toxic. So I think that if we want to change your habits, it's about having a really clear mapped out schedule,
Hmm.
that what you're going to do, figure out where those blocks go. Use a checklist so you make sure you've put all the important stuff in there, right? And the more you can compartmentalize, the better. Like we talked right before this about having
Yeah,
strong emotions right
yeah.
now, like worries and stress. Like there's certain things that none of us want to deal with right now that may be
Or
happening,
have to.
or have to, but we
Yeah,
have to, right? And
yeah.
so what I advise is what you were saying is to be like, I'm gonna put aside a time where I'm
Mhm.
safe, where I can honor
Yeah.
that, and I can, if I want to like stomp my feet, or I want to curse, or I just want to let my emotions out, I'll do it in a safe place without taking it out on other people, but I'll acknowledge that the unfairness of it, or
Right.
let myself get a little angry, because it's better than stuffing or
But you
carrying
know
it throughout
what?
the whole day.
It can also be difficult when you are with somebody who's doing that. Like my husband is 89. Okay, we're like 22 years apart, and he's having a really hard time. First of all,
Change.
yeah,
A change
they're
is
not as
hard.
flexible.
The older you get, the harder
Yeah,
it is to
yeah, it's
change.
really hard. And I
Handle
finally
it.
had
Yeah.
to say to him, this isn't going to work if every time you get upset, you're going to be yelling at me because I got nowhere to go and it's not my fault. And you're going to have, you've got to deal with this because there are other people, you know.
I mean, that's the thing I learned, luckily, when I was really, really young. My
Yeah,
grandmother taught me to keep a journal. And she said, if you're going to navigate all your emotions and all your disappointments and all your hopes and dreams and all those feelings throughout your entire life, you're going to need a journal. And she kept a journal, and every day she'd sit down at her, she had a special desk because, no computers. And
yeah,
she had a little calendar. She'd change the date, and then she would sit and she'd open the book to the right day, and she would start writing. And she
you
would
know,
document everything in our lives. She would document like what we did that day. So it was almost like um the almanac, like the farmer's almanac, like today the weather was this temperature, we're getting more rain. But I think it's great because she had some outlet to a release. We all need release. That's why physical activity, being cooped up, is not good. We need to get outdoors, even if it means bundling up, and even if it means driving around the block in your car, just get
yeah, just
outdoors.
stay away from other
Yeah.
people. Yeah, 6 feet away
Right.
from other
Right.
people.
There's a lot of ways to just
Yeah,
get outside without bothering anyone.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we need that release because our emotions are all high, and that will help us have better habits. It's like I do my walk once a day, or I do my outdoor time once a day, right?
Hmm.
And I do my mental health, I do my meditation or my yoga once a day. And this is a great time to actually build habits.
Yeah.
So if anyone needs help, come to Sassy Business Bosses because that's what we're doing. And when we're done with this, we're going to do the Miracle Morning Challenge again, where we go
Okay, well,
through
you'll
a
give me
morning
the
routine.
link and I'll put that,
Yeah,
I put it on the transcript page. I mean, on the
I
podcast
love
page.
that.
But, speaking of journals, I put together a book a few years ago that I often talk about it, but you just brought it up, so I'm gonna plug it. And it's called How to Crush It in Business Without Crushing Your Spirit: How Entrepreneurs Can Overcome Depression and Find Success. And
Oh,
it was a collaborative book. I'm not an expert on depression, but I got together a bunch of entrepreneurs and everybody told their story. And it was fascinating because one of the keys that was a thread that went through many of the stories was journaling. That was one of the main things. And yet there were people who had, some had sad, some had childhood things that they were dealing with, just different stories and different ways of dealing. So it was fascinating. But yesterday on Facebook, one of my friends posted that she'd bought the book when it first came out and she was going to reread it now. And I said,
oh.
I think I'm going to reread it now too.
Well,
Because
I would highly encourage you to repost it now. Do a
yeah,
special
yeah,
post about it and include the link and say, this could help people at this
yes,
time because
yeah, that's why
this is
the
exactly, you mentioned yesterday about a suicidal
yeah,
neighbor, and
yeah, somebody tried to commit suicide in our building yesterday. Yeah,
that's just insane. I think that that just shows how overconsumption of media, being confined, being uncertain can
being
really
alone or
aggravate.
yeah,
Yeah, being alone
losing a
in this
job.
time
There are all
is
kinds of things.
losing a job. There's so many reasons that can
Yeah,
push a person over the edge, and that's why we need to work on our mental health. So,
definitely.
don't consume so much media. Listen to positive stuff like you posting some comical stuff. That's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Let's be funny right now because we need it. We need to, it's not disrespectful. It's really just we all need a little bit of a break.
Well, that's great. Well,
So,
we need to
and we
try to
don't have
wrap
to
it up.
stop either. We can talk like we're doing today. I want to say
Right,
that
right,
because
absolutely.
social distancing does not mean social isolation. Social distancing means not being closer than 6 to 10 feet from anyone else, washing your hands a lot. But it does not mean that we can't have Zoom calls. I just offered to do a virtual play date with my toddler. I
Hmm.
said, hey, does any of my friends have little kids? They could show toys and like just hang out we'll do a hangout online because, my kids are bored too, right?
I have to laugh. I saw one post where it was like a group of people that usually, get together, I guess, at one of the neighbors' house. And what they did was they were all sitting out and they all had their lawn chairs, but they were all 6 feet apart, and like in a circle on their front lawn. they were they were kibitzing.
I actually saw two men on balconies of their
Yeah.
apartments playing ping pong
Oh yeah.
over the balcony,
Yeah. I mean,
and it went on for 5 minutes. They didn't miss the ball, and then at the end
that's
they
so
missed. But it
funny.
was so funny. It was like they, stay away from each other but throw the ball.
Well, we got to wrap it up, but you did say you were going to say something about your book, and if you have any final tips, and then we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah, so I wrote this book that I'm actually planning on publishing this year, self-publishing,
Hmm.
and this book is for anyone who has come to a point of being stuck and going through a transformation. So I would like to compare it to Eat, Pray, Love, which is
Mm,
a movie I watched,
I love that
and
movie.
it's based on a book by Elizabeth Gilbreth.
Yeah.
And
We're,
um, I didn't write it with that in mind, but when I try to compare to what it would be like, that's pretty much what I describe it. It's like
mhm.
this journey inward. There's a lot of funny things that happen to me too, so it's a fun book to read, and hopefully I'll get it self-published. That's my 2020 goal. When I
Awesome.
narrowed it down, is like publish the book finally, Krista. So, but
Yay.
in the meantime, people
Yeah.
can get in touch with me uh, via Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Those are the main ones
Yeah. Those are my
under
main
Krista
ones too.
Mollion.
Hmm.
So I look forward to hearing more stories on your podcast. Love your podcast. So
Thank
keep it up.
you. Thank you. And it's so great to finally meet you.
Yes, me too. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So that's it for today. To get the show notes, actually, it's the transcript now. It used to be show notes. You can go to www.booksbusinessabundance.com/podcast. And to continue the conversation, we do have a Facebook group, and I'm now putting it in the notes because it's kind of long. But if you want to just find it, you can go to Books Business Abundance on Facebook and group. But that's where you can ask questions and delve deeper into today's topic, share comments and takeaways. And one of the things that we mentioned was that some people did. I originally you could not market in there, but finally I gave in because people wanted that. We do have a marketing post every week, and that's it. So I'm just there to help people, and especially right now, if you need anything, please reach out. As I was saying, I mean, people are really need all kinds of different help. I've had to reach out for help. The other day they said that we may have to leave this place, and it turned out that we didn't, but we had to move to a different apartment. But so many people reached out to me. It was really heartwarming, and somebody I didn't know ended up getting groceries for us through a post from a woman who I know, but she lives in Canada, and this person she knew was here in San Diego, and this person was willing to come and get groceries for us. So I mean, you just don't know until you ask. So amazing, I know. So please ask. So that's it for now. Till next time. Bye bye.